You won't believe this, your soulmate is ready to marry you. Stay with me, and don't rush past this. I know those words may sound almost impossible to trust right now, especially if your heart has learned to protect itself after disappointment, silence, or waiting longer than you should have. This message is not here to convince you, pressure you, or sell you a dream. It's here to explain a shift that didn't happen suddenly, loudly, or magically, but slowly, quietly, and through a lot of inner work that you were never meant to witness. For a long time, marriage may have felt like a closed door in this connection. Not because you didn't believe in it, but because believing started to hurt. You reached a point where you had to choose yourself, where holding on felt heavier than letting go, where waiting felt like self-betrayal instead of hope. And when you made that choice, something inside you changed. You stopped imagining conversations. You stopped building futures in your head. You stopped needing proof. What you didn't know was that the moment you stopped waiting, the entire dynamic shifted. Not immediately. Not dramatically. But deeply. Your soulmate didn't wake up one day ready to marry you. There was no sudden clarity, no lightning bolt of realization. What happened was far less romantic on the surface and far more meaningful underneath. They began to feel the weight of what they avoided. They began to notice the absence you left behind, not as loneliness, but as a lack of alignment in their life. They tried to move forward without you being central. They tried to convince themselves that what you shared was just a phase, just chemistry, just timing. They tried to replace depth with distraction, comfort with convenience, familiarity with ease. And for a while, that almost worked. Almost. But something never settled. They would reach milestones that should have felt exciting and instead feel strangely hollow. They would imagine their future and realize it looked correct but didn't feel complete. They would sit in quiet moments and recognize a version of themselves they only felt when they were honest with you. That's when the realization started to take shape. Not as longing, but as truth. They began to understand that what scared them before wasn't commitment. It was exposure. Choosing you meant choosing depth, accountability, emotional presence. It meant no longer hiding behind timing or circumstances. It meant becoming the kind of partner marriage actually requires. And they weren't ready then. But readiness is not static. It grows through loss, reflection, and consequence. You leaving emotionally forced them to sit with themselves without the cushion of your understanding. Your silence became a mirror. Not a punishment, not a strategy, but a reflection of what life felt like without your emotional presence. And in that mirror, they finally saw the cost of their hesitation. This is where things changed. They started asking themselves questions they used to avoid. Why did safety feel easier than truth? Why did commitment feel like pressure instead of partnership? Why did the idea of marriage scare them more than the idea of losing something real? Those questions didn't have immediate answers. They caused discomfort. They caused internal conflict. But they also caused growth. Your soulmate began doing the work that could not be rushed. Looking at their patterns. Their fears. Their emotional limits. They began understanding that love doesn't wait forever, and people don't stay available indefinitely without losing themselves. They realized something crucial. You didn't walk away because you stopped loving them. You walked away because you finally loved yourself enough to stop waiting. That realization humbled them. And humility is where readiness begins. Marriage stopped being an abstract idea to them. It stopped being about obligation or expectation. It became about alignment. About choosing someone fully, openly, and without hesitation. About standing beside someone instead of holding them at a distance. When they thought about marriage now, they didn't imagine a role. They imagined a partner. And every time they imagined that partner honestly, it was you. Not the version of you who waited. Not the version of you who hoped silently. But the version of you who chose clarity, strength, and self-respect. They realized they didn't want a future that merely functioned. They wanted one that felt true. And here is the part that matters for you. This shift did not happen because you waited longer or loved harder. It happened because you stopped abandoning yourself. Your absence forced growth that your presence could not. That's why this feels unbelievable. Because when you let go, you weren't trying to change them. You were trying to survive. And survival turned into alignment. Your soulmate is now ready to marry not because they are afraid of losing you again, but because they finally understand what choosing you means. They understand that marriage is not about certainty. It's about commitment to growth, honesty, and presence even when it's uncomfortable. They know now that you are not someone to be almost chosen. You are someone to stand beside. This doesn't mean everything becomes perfect overnight. Readiness doesn't erase the past. It integrates it. They are aware of what they lost time-wise. They are aware of the trust that must be rebuilt. They are aware that words alone will never be enough. And that awareness is exactly why this is different. This is not someone reaching out from loneliness. This is not someone panicking at the idea of being alone. This is someone who has done the internal work to show up differently. They are no longer asking whether they should choose you. They are asking how to honor you. And here is where your role shifts completely. You are no longer the one waiting for clarity. You are no longer the one holding space for potential. You are the one deciding whether what they offer now aligns with who you have become. Marriage, when it comes from this place, is not a fantasy. It's a grounded choice. A decision made with eyes open, heart steady, and ego quiet. And the most important truth of all is this. You didn't lose time. You gained clarity. You learned how deeply you can love without losing yourself. You learned how to walk away without closing your heart. You learned that being chosen late is not the same as being chosen reluctantly. If this union happens, it will not be built on waiting, longing, or uncertainty. It will be built on presence. And that changes everything. This is only the beginning of this story. In the next part, you'll understand how this readiness shows up in actions, not promises, and why you don't have to rush to believe anything until you see consistency with your own eyes. For now, let this land gently. You were never asking for too much. You were asking the right person to be ready. And readiness has finally arrived. Stay with me a little longer. This part is not about excitement or celebration. It's about grounding. Because when something you once gave up on starts moving toward you again, the most important thing is not hope, it's clarity. When your soulmate became ready, it didn't feel like relief to them at first. It felt heavy. Heavy with responsibility. Heavy with awareness. heavy with the understanding that readiness comes with consequence. They knew that stepping toward you now could not look like stepping toward you before. Back then, they were operating from fear, confusion, and avoidance. Now, they are operating from accountability. And accountability changes the tone of everything. They are no longer imagining a future in vague terms. They are imagining logistics, sacrifices, and real-life alignment. Where to live. How to blend lives. How to show up consistently. How to be emotionally present even on days when it feels uncomfortable. Marriage stopped being an idea and became a commitment they had to measure themselves against. That's how you know this is real. Because fantasy skips the hard parts. Readiness walks directly into them. Your soulmate has replayed moments from the past, not to torture themselves, but to understand where they failed you emotionally. They've seen how often you gave without demanding, how often you waited without complaining, how often you showed patience that went unnoticed. And instead of feeling entitled to another chance, they feel humbled by the idea that you may no longer be available in the same way. This humility matters more than any promise. They are not approaching you with urgency. They are approaching you with care. They know rushing would dishonor the growth you had to do alone. They know pressure would only recreate old dynamics. So instead, they are moving deliberately, with restraint and respect. You may notice this as a shift in their energy rather than their words. They listen more. They interrupt less. They don't rush to defend themselves when the past comes up. They don't minimize what you went through. They allow discomfort to exist without trying to smooth it over. That is emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is the foundation marriage actually needs. At the same time, something important has changed in you. You are not receiving this readiness from the same place you once would have. Before, you might have clung to it, feared losing it, or rushed to secure it. Now, you are steady, observant, calm. You are not trying to be convinced. You are watching. You are watching whether their actions match their awareness. You are watching whether consistency replaces intensity. You are watching whether presence replaces explanation. And this is exactly where you are supposed to be. Because love that leads to marriage must be evaluated, not idealized. Your soulmate senses this too. They can feel that you are no longer emotionally negotiable. That you are open, but not eager. Warm, but not waiting. This doesn't intimidate them the way it once might have. It grounds them. It signals that if they step forward, it must be fully. Half steps won't reach you anymore. They are also becoming aware of something else. Something subtle but powerful. They are no longer choosing you to fill a gap in their life. They are choosing you because life finally makes sense when they imagine building it with you intentionally. Not escaping toward you. Building with you. That distinction is everything. Choosing someone out of lack creates dependency. Choosing someone out of alignment creates partnership. They are choosing alignment now. This is why their approach feels quieter than you expected. There are no grand speeches. No dramatic declarations. No emotional flooding. Instead, there is steadiness. Reliability. A sense that they are not trying to win you, but to stand beside you. That's the difference between desire and readiness. Desire reaches. Readiness arrives. You may still feel moments of doubt. That's natural. Trust doesn't regenerate instantly just because someone has changed internally. Trust rebuilds through repetition. Through showing up when it's inconvenient. Through staying consistent when emotions fluctuate. Your soulmate knows this now. And instead of resenting it, they accept it as part of what maturity requires. Marriage, to them, is no longer about securing love. It's about sustaining it. And sustaining love means being willing to be seen on ordinary days, difficult days, and emotionally exposed days. It means not disappearing into silence. It means choosing conversation over avoidance. It means repairing instead of retreating. They didn't know how to do that before. Now, they are learning. And here is where your power truly lives. You don't have to decide anything quickly. You don't have to forgive everything immediately. You don't have to step into the future just because someone else finally caught up. You are allowed to move at the pace of your own nervous system. You are allowed to ask yourself hard questions. Does this feel grounded or familiar? Does this feel consistent or reactive? Does this feel safe in my body, not just exciting in my mind? Marriage is not about emotional fireworks. It's about emotional safety. And you understand that now in a way you didn't before. If this union happens, it will not be because you waited long enough or loved hard enough. It will be because both of you arrived at the same place, ready to build, ready to commit, ready to be accountable for the impact you have on each other. And if at any point you realize that readiness exists but alignment does not, you will trust yourself enough to honor that truth too. That is the greatest difference between who you were and who you are now. You are no longer afraid of losing love. You are more concerned with choosing the right one. That shift protects you. This part of the story is not asking you to believe anything yet. It's asking you to stay present, grounded, and honest with yourself. To allow the possibility without surrendering your discernment. Because when love leads to marriage in a healthy way, it doesn't sweep you away from yourself. It meets you exactly where you stand. And right now, you stand stronger, clearer, and more rooted than ever before. In the next part, we will talk about how you will know, without doubt, whether this readiness is real and sustainable, not through words, but through patterns that cannot be faked. For now, let this settle. You are not being chosen late. You are being chosen correctly. And that difference changes everything. Stay with me through this part, because this is where your intuition becomes louder than hope, louder than fear, louder than the past. This is the part where you stop asking whether they are ready, and start noticing how readiness actually shows up in real life, in small moments, in ordinary days, in situations where no one is watching. Real readiness does not announce itself. It doesn't come with constant reassurance or dramatic promises. In fact, when someone is truly ready, they stop trying to convince you of anything. They let consistency speak. They let time do its work. They understand that trust is not rebuilt through intensity, but through reliability. You may notice that your soulmate no longer disappears when things get emotionally uncomfortable. Before, silence was their escape. Now, silence feels foreign to them. They initiate conversations they once avoided. They stay present even when the topic is difficult. They don't rush to resolve feelings just to feel better. They sit with them. With you. That shift matters more than any declaration. You might notice that they remember things now. Not just big things, but small ones. Your rhythms. Your preferences. The way you need space after emotional conversations. The way you need reassurance without being smothered. They are paying attention in a way they never did before, because attention is a form of commitment. Marriage is built on attention. You also begin to notice how they handle your boundaries. This is one of the clearest signs of readiness. Someone who is still operating from fear will push against boundaries, even subtly. They will test them. Question them. Treat them like obstacles. Someone who is ready respects boundaries without resentment. They don't take them personally. They see them as information. Your soulmate no longer reacts defensively when you take time for yourself. They don't panic when you don't immediately respond. They don't interpret your calm as distance. They understand that you are no longer living in anxiety, and they don't try to pull you back into it. That understanding is new for them. And it's new because they've changed internally, not because you've explained yourself better. Another thing you may notice is that they are no longer future faking. Before, the future may have been discussed in vague, comforting terms. Someday. Eventually. When things settle. Now, the future is spoken about practically. Thoughtfully. With awareness of real-world implications. They don't talk about forever as an escape. They talk about building as a responsibility. They consider how decisions affect you. How choices ripple outward. How commitment requires adjustments, sacrifices, and humility. This doesn't make the future feel smaller. It makes it feel real. At the same time, something important is happening inside you. You are no longer placing your worth on whether this works out. That is a massive shift. You are open, but you are not attached to outcome. You are curious, but not consumed. You are present, but not waiting. And because of that, you are able to see clearly instead of emotionally negotiating with yourself. You might catch yourself thinking things like, I will know if this is right without forcing it. Or, I don't need to rush this to feel secure. Or, I trust myself to walk away if alignment fades again. Those thoughts would have scared you before. Now, they steady you. You are no longer trying to prove that you are worthy of marriage. You are assessing whether marriage with this person honors who you have become. That reversal of perspective is not arrogance. It is self-respect. Your soulmate senses this too. They can feel that you are not afraid of losing them. Not because you don't care, but because you trust yourself. And instead of triggering their old fears, this actually invites their best self forward. People rise to meet clarity. They begin showing up in ways that are quiet but consistent. They check in without being asked. They follow through on things that don't benefit them immediately. They make space for your emotions without trying to manage them. They stop centering themselves in every conversation. These are not romantic gestures. These are marital ones. You may also notice how conflict feels different now. Before, disagreement might have felt like threat. Now, it feels like information. You can express discomfort without fear of abandonment. You can disagree without bracing yourself. You can be honest without wondering if it will push them away. That sense of emotional safety is not accidental. It is built. And it is built when two people are finally operating from the same level of maturity. Still, there may be moments where the past echoes. Moments where you remember how much waiting hurt. Moments where your body tenses unexpectedly. When that happens, notice how they respond. Do they get impatient? Do they dismiss it? Or do they slow down and stay with you? Readiness shows itself most clearly in these moments. Someone who is ready does not ask you to forget the past quickly. They understand that healing is not linear. They don't rush forgiveness. They don't demand trust. They earn it, again and again, through steadiness. And you are no longer afraid to let that process take time. Because you are not chasing a finish line. You are protecting a foundation. Marriage built on urgency cracks easily. Marriage built on trust settles deeply. You may find yourself feeling strangely calm about everything. Not numb. Not detached. Just calm. That calm is your nervous system recognizing alignment. It is your body saying, "This is different." And if at any point that calm turns into tension, you will notice it immediately. You won't explain it away. You won't minimize it. You will listen. That is your power now. You are not here to be convinced. You are here to be met. This part of the story is not about guaranteeing an outcome. It is about recognizing that you no longer need guarantees to feel secure. You trust your capacity to respond to reality as it unfolds. That trust is what makes a healthy marriage possible. Whether this journey leads to a shared life or a respectful parting, you will not lose yourself again. That chapter is closed. You have crossed a threshold where self-respect is non-negotiable and love is no longer something you audition for. And that changes everything. As you move through this phase, let yourself stay slow. Let yourself stay observant. Let yourself stay grounded. You don't owe anyone speed. You don't owe anyone certainty. You owe yourself honesty. And honesty will guide you better than hope ever could. In the next part, we will explore what it looks like when both people choose marriage not as a promise of happiness, but as a commitment to growth, and how you will know when the choice is mutual, grounded, and sustainable for the long term. For now, rest in this truth. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are choosing with clarity. And that is the strongest place you could possibly stand. Stay with me through this next stretch, because this is where everything becomes quieter and more real at the same time. This is the phase where nothing dramatic happens on the outside, but everything important settles on the inside. This is where the idea of marriage stops being something you talk about and becomes something you feel the weight of, calmly, honestly, without fantasy. By now, you've probably noticed that you're no longer trying to predict the ending. Earlier in your life, uncertainty pushed you into imagination. You filled gaps with hope, fear, or stories about what might happen. Now, you don't feel that pull anymore. You don't need to run ahead of the present moment. You are standing inside it, grounded enough to let things unfold without forcing meaning onto them. That alone tells you how much you've changed. Marriage, when it's real, doesn't arrive as a rush of emotion. It arrives as a sense of steadiness. A feeling that your life doesn't need to be defended, explained, or negotiated to fit beside someone else's. Instead, it expands naturally, without tension. You start noticing this in small, almost unremarkable moments. When decisions come up, they are discussed, not avoided. When stress appears, it's shared instead of hidden. When emotions surface, they're met with presence instead of distance. None of this feels flashy, but it feels solid. This is what people mean when they say love becomes a place instead of a feeling. Your soulmate, now that they are ready, is no longer trying to prove anything. They are not performing growth. They are not narrating their self-awareness. They simply live it. You see it in how they show up consistently, even when there is nothing to gain. You see it in how they take responsibility without being prompted. You see it in how they remain emotionally available on ordinary days, not just meaningful ones. And just as importantly, you notice how you feel around them. You are not anxious. You are not hyper-aware. You are not managing the connection. You are simply present. Your body feels calmer around them. Your thoughts don't spiral after conversations. You don't replay interactions searching for hidden meaning. You trust what is happening because it matches what is being said. That alignment between words, actions, and energy is something you didn't have before. And now that you have it, you know you will never settle for less. Another quiet shift happens here that you may not fully notice at first. You stop fantasizing about the future in exaggerated ways. You don't picture dramatic moments or perfect milestones. Instead, you imagine shared routines. Morning conversations. Grocery lists. Quiet evenings. Hard days where you still feel supported. This is not a loss of romance. This is romance maturing into partnership. Your soulmate is also feeling this shift. They are no longer driven by fear of losing you. They are motivated by the desire to build something that lasts. That motivation is steadier, slower, and far more reliable. It doesn't burn hot and fast. It stays. You may find that they speak differently now. Not in promises, but in intentions. Not in absolutes, but in commitments they know they can keep. They don't talk about marriage as something that will fix anything. They talk about it as something that will require ongoing care, communication, and accountability. That awareness matters. Because marriage doesn't solve uncertainty. It exposes it. Someone who is ready understands that. Someone who isn't tries to avoid it. You also begin to notice how conflict is handled at this stage. Not avoided, not escalated, but addressed. Disagreements don't feel like threats anymore. They feel like moments of adjustment. You can express discomfort without fear of being misunderstood or abandoned. You can listen without preparing your defense. That emotional safety is not accidental. It is built slowly, through repetition and reliability. And you are participating in it differently now. You are not over-explaining your needs. You are not minimizing your feelings. You are not negotiating your boundaries. You speak plainly, calmly, honestly. And your soulmate meets you there. This is one of the clearest signs that marriage is possible. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of repair. The ability to move through discomfort without disconnection. The willingness to stay emotionally present when it would be easier to withdraw. You've learned to watch for that now. Another important realization settles in during this phase. You understand that marriage is not about being chosen once. It's about being chosen repeatedly, in small, everyday ways. In how someone responds when you're tired. In how they include you in decisions. In how they protect the relationship without controlling it. You are paying attention to these things now, not from fear, but from wisdom. And because of that, you don't feel rushed. You know that something real does not need urgency to survive. It needs care. This patience feels different than waiting used to feel. Before, waiting felt like suspension. Like your life was on hold. Now, patience feels active. You are living fully while observing alignment. You are not postponing your happiness to see what happens next. That distinction changes everything. Your soulmate feels this difference too. They don't sense pressure from you. They sense clarity. And clarity invites honesty. They are more open about their fears, their limitations, their hopes. Not because they're unsure, but because they understand that transparency is the only way marriage works. You don't feel threatened by these conversations. You feel informed. Informed is a powerful place to stand. It means you are choosing with awareness, not fantasy. It means you are entering the possibility of marriage with your eyes open and your feet on the ground. It means you are not asking this relationship to heal old wounds. You are asking it to grow with you. This is also where you realize that even if this leads to marriage, it will not look like the version you once imagined. And that's a good thing. The old version was built on hope, longing, and uncertainty. This version is built on self-trust, mutual respect, and emotional presence. It feels quieter because it is stronger. You may still have moments of reflection where you think about how far you've come. About the version of you who would have rushed, who would have been afraid to ask questions, who would have accepted less just to keep the connection alive. You don't judge that version of yourself anymore. You thank them. They did the best they could with what they knew. And because of them, you are here now, choosing from a place of wholeness instead of fear. Marriage, if it happens, will not complete you. You already feel complete. It will complement you. It will give your life a shared direction, not a missing piece. And if at any point you sense misalignment again, you trust yourself to respond without collapsing or clinging. That trust makes you calm, and calm makes you clear. This phase is not about making a decision yet. It's about noticing how natural it feels to not rush one. When love is right, you don't feel like you're standing at the edge of a cliff. You feel like you're walking onto solid ground. Slowly. Intentionally. Together. And that's where you are now. In the next phase, the focus won't be on readiness anymore. It will be on choice. Mutual, grounded, repeated choice. Not because you are afraid of losing each other, but because you see clearly what you are building. For now, let yourself stay exactly where you are. Present. Observant. Steady. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time for the kind of love that doesn't rush, doesn't hide, and doesn't ask you to be anything other than who you already are. Stay with me through this final stretch, because this is where the meaning of everything you've lived through finally settles into something usable, something steady, something you can actually build a life on. This is not about reaching a finish line. It's about understanding what it truly means when two people are finally choosing each other from the same place, at the same time, without fear running the conversation. By now, marriage doesn't feel like a reward or a rescue. It doesn't feel like proof that the pain was worth it or that waiting had a purpose. It feels like a responsibility you are willing to carry only if it feels mutual, grounded, and emotionally clean. That shift alone tells you how deeply you've changed. There was a time when love felt like intensity, urgency, and emotional risk. Back then, the idea of marriage may have felt like security, something that would finally calm the uncertainty inside you. Now, it's the opposite. You are calm first. And from that calm, you are evaluating whether marriage actually adds to the life you've already stabilized within yourself. That is the healthiest place to stand. You notice now that you don't feel pressured by timelines. You're not counting milestones or comparing your path to anyone else's. You're no longer asking whether this is happening fast enough or slow enough. You're asking a different question entirely. Does this feel honest in my body? Does this feel sustainable in my life? Does this feel like a partnership where both people are choosing, not compensating? These questions don't create anxiety. They create clarity. Your soulmate, in this phase, is no longer leading with emotion alone. They are leading with responsibility. You see it in how they talk about the future without making it sound like an escape. You see it in how they plan without assuming. You see it in how they include you without controlling you. They don't speak as if marriage will fix anything. They speak as if marriage will require effort, patience, and humility. And instead of that scaring you, it reassures you. Because you know now that love that ignores reality doesn't survive it. You also notice how different it feels to be wanted from a place of wholeness rather than fear. They are not choosing you because they are afraid to lose you. They are choosing you because life makes more sense when they imagine building it with you intentionally. That kind of choice doesn't cling. It commits. And you feel the difference. There is no emotional chasing anymore. No subtle testing. No power imbalance. You don't feel like you need to prove your value or manage their emotions. You don't feel responsible for keeping the connection alive. It lives on its own, through shared effort, not emotional labor on one side. This is what mutuality feels like. At the same time, you are aware that marriage is not a fantasy state where fear disappears forever. You know that challenges will come. Differences will surface. Old wounds may occasionally whisper. But the difference now is that you trust the process. You trust communication. You trust repair. You no longer fear conflict as a sign of failure. You see it as information. As an opportunity to adjust instead of retreat. That understanding only comes when someone has already survived the pain of emotional disconnection and learned from it. You have. You also notice that your sense of identity remains intact. You don't feel like you're merging into someone else's life or being absorbed into a shared future at the cost of yourself. You still feel like you. Grounded. Independent. Clear. Marriage, in this light, doesn't feel like losing freedom. It feels like sharing direction. That distinction matters more than romance. You might find yourself reflecting on the version of you who once would have rushed into this moment, overwhelmed by relief and hope. You don't judge that version. You honor them. They were surviving with the tools they had. But you also recognize that this version of you would not have been able to sustain what you are now capable of sustaining. You needed the journey to become this person. Now, you are not afraid to say no if something feels off. And you are not afraid to say yes if something feels aligned. Both responses come from the same place of self-trust. That self-trust is what makes a marriage healthy, not blind commitment or emotional dependency. Your soulmate senses this strength in you. And instead of feeling threatened by it, they respect it. They don't try to rush you into certainty. They don't pressure you into decisions. They understand that a choice made from steadiness lasts longer than a choice made from fear. That patience is a form of love. You also become aware that love, at this stage, feels quieter in your body. Not dull. Not empty. Quiet in the way that safety feels quiet. Your nervous system is no longer on high alert. You don't brace for loss or disappointment. You allow yourself to enjoy what is happening without guarding against what might go wrong. This doesn't mean you're naive. It means you're regulated. And regulated people make better choices. Marriage, when approached from this place, becomes less about ceremony and more about daily alignment. How you handle stress together. How you support each other's growth. How you navigate change without losing respect. These things matter more to you now than grand gestures ever did. You find yourself imagining ordinary life together and feeling at peace with it. Shared responsibilities. Shared routines. Shared silence. That peace is not boring. It's reassuring. It tells you that love does not have to be dramatic to be meaningful. It has to be consistent. As you sit in this phase, you may notice that you are no longer asking the universe for signs. You're not looking for confirmation from outside yourself. You trust your internal signals. You trust how your body responds. You trust the patterns you see unfolding over time. That trust is earned. You earned it by walking away when you had to. By staying when it was honest. By choosing yourself when waiting became painful. And because you earned it, you don't second-guess it now. Whether this journey leads directly into marriage or continues unfolding at its own pace, you know one thing with certainty. You will not lose yourself again. You will not settle for almost. You will not confuse potential with presence. And that certainty is what makes everything else possible. This phase is not asking you to decide everything. It's asking you to stay connected to yourself while remaining open to partnership. To let love meet you where you are instead of abandoning yourself to meet love. You are no longer proving that you are worthy of marriage. You are evaluating whether marriage, with this person, reflects the life you are consciously choosing. That is the clearest sign of readiness there is. Let this understanding settle gently. There is no rush now. No pressure. No fear driving the outcome. Only awareness, mutual respect, and the quiet confidence that whatever you choose next will be chosen from truth. And choices made from truth tend to last. Stay with me until the very end. This is the closing of the circle, the moment where nothing is hidden anymore, where there are no cliff edges left, no suspense, no emotional guessing games. This is where everything that was confusing finally makes sense, not in a dramatic way, but in a deeply grounding one. This is where you see the full truth of what has been unfolding, and why it could only unfold this way. At this point, there is no illusion left about love, timing, or destiny. You are not romanticizing struggle anymore, and you are not afraid of happiness either. You are standing in a rare place where honesty feels safer than hope, and clarity feels more comforting than fantasy. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because you were willing to walk through uncertainty without betraying yourself. Here is the first truth that becomes impossible to ignore now. Your soulmate didn't suddenly become ready. They became ready because everything else stopped working. They tried living without alignment. They tried convincing themselves that comfort was enough. They tried postponing the kind of depth you brought into their life. And life kept showing them the same lesson in different forms until they finally understood it. Every relationship that felt flat. Every future that looked fine but felt empty. Every moment where success didn't feel satisfying. All of it pointed back to one realization: they had avoided the one connection that required them to grow into their highest self. And growth always comes with a cost. They had to face the truth that fear had shaped more of their life than they wanted to admit. Fear of responsibility. Fear of emotional exposure. Fear of choosing something that couldn't be undone. And once they saw that clearly, they couldn't unsee it. That's when readiness stopped being theoretical and became personal. But here is the second truth, and this one is about you. You are not meeting them where you once stood. You are meeting them as someone who no longer needs to be chosen to feel whole. You already learned how to be steady without reassurance. You already learned how to walk away from uncertainty. You already learned how to live without anchoring your worth to someone else's decisions. That means this ending is not about whether they are ready. It's about whether this union is aligned. This is the most important shift of all. Earlier in your life, love felt like something you waited for, hoped for, or endured confusion for. Now, love feels like something you allow only if it fits naturally into the life you have already built within yourself. You are no longer shaping your life around love. Love must shape itself around your life. That is maturity. And that maturity changes the entire outcome. Here is the third truth, the one that ties everything together. Marriage, if it happens here, is not the reward for patience. It is the result of alignment. You were never meant to be rewarded for waiting. You were meant to outgrow waiting. And you did. The reason this connection can now move toward marriage is not because time passed, but because both of you changed in the right direction. They learned accountability. You learned self-trust. Without both of those, marriage would have collapsed under old patterns. Now, look at what is actually being revealed in this final stage. They are no longer asking you to believe in potential. They are no longer asking you to imagine a future. They are no longer asking you to fill emotional gaps. They are offering something concrete: presence, consistency, and shared responsibility. And you are no longer responding from fear of losing them. You are responding from discernment. That is the only way a lifelong commitment can begin without resentment. Another truth surfaces here, one that quietly resolves the past. Nothing was wasted. Not the waiting. Not the heartbreak. Not the silence. Every phase shaped you into someone who can now recognize healthy love without confusing it with intensity. And every phase shaped them into someone who understands that love cannot survive without courage. If either of you had arrived here earlier, it would not have worked. That's the part people struggle to accept, but it's the truth. Timing didn't betray you. Timing protected you. Because love that arrives before both people are ready becomes trauma instead of partnership. Now, this is where everything is finally revealed clearly, without mystery. If you choose to move forward together, it will not be because you were afraid to let go. It will be because you saw consistency over time. Because your nervous system felt safe. Because your voice was heard without being softened. Because your boundaries were respected without negotiation. Marriage, in this light, is not a leap. It is a continuation. And if at any point you sense that alignment slipping, you will not freeze or panic. You trust yourself too much now. You know you can walk away from anything that stops being honest. That knowledge removes fear from the equation. Which leads to the final truth, the one that completes this entire story. You were never chasing marriage. You were chasing truth. Truth about love. Truth about yourself. Truth about what you will and will not accept. Marriage was only ever meant to happen once truth was no longer negotiable. And now, truth is the foundation. Whether this union becomes a shared life, a shared home, a shared future, or simply a shared chapter that led you both where you needed to go, you will not regret how you arrived here. Because you did not abandon yourself. You did not shrink. You did not settle. You did not rush. You grew.
Hello everyone, this is ending does not come with firework or dramatic declaration. It comes with something far more rare: peace. Peace in your body, peace in your choices, peace in your knowing that you are no longer available for love that requires suffering to exist. If marriage happens, it will be built on two people who have already faced their shadows. If it doesn't, you will still walk forward whole, clear, and unfeared of standing again. That is the real revelation. You were never waiting for them to be ready. You were becoming someone who would only accept love that is, and that is why this story ends with uncertainty but with grounded confidence. You are not stepping into the future hoping it works. You are stepping into it knowing you will be okay either way. That is the strongest place love can ever begin. Thanks for watching. If you love this video, please like this video and subscribe to this channel.